Hello and good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jenna Gregorich. I think we have a really good program ahead for you as we're going to learn about sustainable egg production. So before we get started, a couple housekeeping notes. So if you're joining us on Zoom, you can pop those questions. We are live, so put those questions in the Q&A. The chat feature is turned off. If you're on YouTube, there is no live chat feature, so you can just sit back and enjoy the program. So first, I wanted to start off by thanking our sponsors for today, Ohio Poultry Association, Trillium Farms, and Grow Next Gen. So we've also done 4 previous virtual field trips, and you can view those at Grow Next Gen at grownextgen.org/events/Chickenology. And so like I said, today I think is a great program. Ohio is actually a really large poultry producing state, which I don't know if many people are familiar with. We're actually number 2 in egg producers in the nation, with over 10 billion eggs produced each year. And agriculture is Ohio's largest industry, with 1 in 9 Ohioans in an ag-related job, and 50% of Ohio's land is in agriculture production like soybeans. So as I mentioned, I work for Ohio Poultry Association, and OPA, we work with Ohio's egg, chicken, and turkey farmers. And today we're going to learn about how those eggs are made and processed and how they end up in your grocery store. So with OPA, I am the bird health programs manager. So I work with the farmers that we're going to be meeting today on monitoring certain diseases and how they can implement biosecurity practices on their farm to help keep their birds healthy. And so some of what we're talking about today, Trillium Farms is one of the sponsors, and that's where we're at today. They take a lot of pride and responsibility in balancing those pillars of sustainability, such as cultural and social, economic, and what we're focusing on today, environmental. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce our guest expert today, Nick Watson. He is the business unit leader of Trillium Farms at Lair Site 1. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself today, Jenna?
I'm doing great. So, Nick, if you wouldn't mind, would you tell us what your role is, what some of your daily responsibilities, and just a little bit more about what is done on Lair Site 1?
Okay. So, like I said, my name is Nick Watson. I'm the business unit leader here at Lair 1 in Croton, Ohio. I basically manage the day-to-day operations, short-term and long-term, for the entire site. We house roughly about 2.2 to 2.3 million chickens here every day, producing anywhere between 150 to 160,000 dozens a day. So looking down at this, you can see this is our complex. It's set up. Each of those barns houses roughly 165,000 chickens. The 2 barns in the back are where we store our manure once it's been dried. And then also we have some lagoons in the back side of the plant that we collect our stormwater, our egg wash for land application and whatnot. Back at the front, you'll see towards the end of the video that we have a processing plant. So that's where we process all of our eggs. We wash them, we carton them, and then we ship them off. On any given day, we touch about 45 million people with our eggs. We have roughly 5 complexes that are about the similar size to this complex in Ohio. And then we also have sister farms throughout Iowa, the state of Washington, and the state of Oregon as well that service pretty much the entire Midwest and the West Coast. So we touch a lot of families every day with our product. We're very cognizant of our product and our taking care of our hens and their welfare. And that's what we do every day here. We take care of our birds, we produce eggs, and we get them to consumers like yourselves every day.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's a good point. We kind of had a question, I think, during registration, but those eggs with the amount you're producing, they do not just all stay in Ohio, correct?
No, so typically this particular plant that we have here, we ship to Indiana, Illinois, some to New York, and all over the state of Ohio. Pretty much the entire Midwest. There's a good chance that if you walk into a Walmart or a local store, you'll find some of our eggs within that store.
Okay. And so we had a question from Miss Dimchek from Elect CLC. And her question was in regards to the costs of maintaining a facility. And I think that leads us perfectly into our next topic as far as technology. So obviously,
Yeah.
that is a large site. There's a lot of equipment and a lot of costs to make all that happen, but you are able to produce more eggs that way. So would you mind, we're going to get into technology. Tell us a little bit about some of the technology you have at that farm in order to ensure the bird health and how to make sure that those safe products are getting out to consumers.
Okay. So in this slide ahead here, we have a gentleman that's working through what we call our AEI system. That is our automatic environmental controls. Basically, if you go to the next one, you'll see that we have a complete overview of every house that has a bird in it. We look at things like temperature, static air pressure, which is the movement of air, airflow itself, all the while making sure that the birds have the right ventilation, the right air quality, the right amount of feed, all sorts of those facets. Basically, we use a term called FLAWS. So it's feed, light, air, water, and sanitation. And those are the five facets of egg production that we maintain with the birds, making sure that they have the best environment possible. If you go to the next screen, you'll see that each house is set up that we have 46 fans in each house. We have 12 thermometer probes that measure the temperature, and we're trying to hit a target temperature every day. So making sure that that bird has a good temperature, it's comfortable in the barns, and we do that through these fans. So on this screen, you'll see the green fans are what are actually running. So this is a fan that we have in our house. They're roughly a 4x4 fan, and they actually draw air in through the attic. If you want to go to that diagram, Dan. And the way it works is we have eaves on each of our buildings in the roofs. And if you start up by the eave where the roof starts, you'll see that the air comes into the attic. So we're bringing cool, clean air, and then it comes down through those louvers or baffles, as you might call them, as the fan draws the air down through the cage system. This ensures that we're keeping the birds cooled off. They're getting well ventilated air, clean air. And you can see, so you see the little area where it says L1 good and L3 bad. So we have different barn designs. So here at Layer 1, we have a cover that covers our fans so that the exhausted air actually goes down to the ground, and that helps filter out some of the particulate that might go out with the bird, with the air, sorry. So such as dander, or feather, residue, or dust. And that prevents it from coming back in the eaves. Whereas some of the older design barns, and this is where kind of technology has improved, you can see that the air comes straight out, and then it has the possibility of getting recirculated back into the eaves. So sometimes those eaves get a little dirtier faster. We do a really good job at cleaning them to make sure that we're getting good airflow and good air quality to our hens in the houses.
Okay, and this is a perfect example. All those monitors and temperature probes and everything you have throughout the house, like they're all connected to computers, and therefore you can view at any time 24/7 what's going on in the house, and if there is an issue, exactly where in the house that issue is occurring, so you can fix it quicker, correct?
Absolutely. And that's, there's an alarm system too with the system that notifies us if anything's out of whack. So, you saw those 12 thermometer probes. If one gets a little high, we do have some backups to that system that will alert us through our radios as well as through our cell phones that something is amiss. We need somebody to go look at it. And you can see down at the bottom of the screen, there's a little alarm with a light. There'll be alarms in that category, and we have to acknowledge them once we take care of them. And I've been pretty blessed with my team here. They're a fairly tenured team. They've been here for quite a few years, and they're really good at taking care of the assets that we have. They're excellent stewards of the barns and the hens as well. So this video kind of shows the outside view of that side angle, and you can see that if we pause right here between the two houses, you can see how I have that little green cover on the side of the building that helps prevent from the dust and dander, going back up into that eave and causing it to be dirty. So like I said, we value that facet of air quality is very important, along with the temperature. Sometimes the temperature, high temperatures and low temperatures will affect how the bird consumes the feed, which can affect what size of egg they make or how many eggs they make. The warmer they are, the less they eat. The cooler they are, the more they like to eat. And it's important to understand that, poultry, these hens, they generate an enormous amount of heat. So none of these facilities are heated, and they will stay in the 80 degrees all summer long. We'll ventilate them, and even in the winter, they'll stay in the 80-degree range um, while they're generating all that heat and that carbon dioxide when they exhale. That's why it's so important to get this fresh vented air to these birds on a regular basis.
And I know that kind of ties along. We did have a question in regards to like, farms that are down south or in warmer weather, even in the summer, those fans can automatically pop on or speed up to kick off as needed to keep that constant temperature.
Yeah. So that's kind of, the summertime is a very warm time for us. We typically never turn our fans off, and we're running nonstop to try to keep them cool and ventilated. And then the summer is the opposite. We run our fans more in the summer just to provide fresh air from time to time, so they don't run nonstop like you saw in that picture where a couple of them were green. They weren't all green, and that helps keep that fresh air and just good quality air to the
Yeah.
birds for producing eggs.
Okay, great. So do you mind telling us a little bit? We'll move on to grain and feed and what that looks like in your house. How do you get feed to the birds? Where does it all come from?
Mhm.
And a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so every day, pretty much in Ohio, we are purchasing grains from local farmers, whether that be in the form of corn from the local areas or soybean meal from soybean meal plants that have been purchasing soybeans from the local farmers. We typically, the way it works is let me just pull up my note here real quick. We purchase, or sorry, we create about 2,500 tons of feed every day for our birds. To kind of put that into retrospect, that's roughly 100 tractor trailers worth of feed that is delivered on a daily basis to our birds.
Wow. And you said a lot of
Um,
that does come from local farmers, correct?
yep, absolutely.
Awesome.
We're always taking corn from local farmers. We're buying it from them, so we're giving back to the community in terms of a large economic impact as well as environmental. We're really good stewards with our local community, making sure that they're taken care of, that their concerns are noted and taken care of, and that we're just providing back into the community, whether it's purchasing feed or even donating eggs or time.
Yeah, and I know we'll get into it later, but obviously then that manure of the birds, the farmers really appreciate as well for fertilizer, good natural fertilizer. So, but we can talk about that
Absolutely.
later. Nice little circle of life. So,
Right.
we do have a question from Miss Gapalan from Baltimore Polytechnic Institute. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but the question was, do you incorporate hormones in the feed?
So a lot of people have asked this question from what I've been told before, that it is actually illegal in the US to treat poultry feed, whether it be through hormones or steroids. We do not do that, nor know anybody that does do it. But what is important to understand is that our feed is kind of like almost like we as humans look at our food. There's a nutritional profile for every formulation that we have. Each formulation varies on different stages of life for the chicken. Whether it be a chicken that's coming into production where we're trying to get it to start to lay eggs, that will have a different nutritional density. So whether it has more vitamins, more amino acids in it, more corn, less soybean meal, all designed at getting that bird to create an efficient egg and produce. So like I said, every formula is different. When you saw the pictures of my houses, not every bird in this house is the same. Right now, we're roughly around an average age of 55 weeks. So we have some flocks that are in the 20-week age, and then we have other flocks that are in the 100-week age. But we look at each individual flock from a nutritional perspective to make sure that we're giving them the right nutrients for their health, for their welfare, as well as for egg production at the end of the day. So
Excellent.
this
And
screen that's coming up here kind of shows how an individual house works. So what this is this basically our feed and water. It's part of our environmental systems. So you can see in the top left, every house has roughly 2 feed bins. We usually run off of one bin till it empties out, and then we move over to the next bin. And these are where those formulas are stored. So this bin number 2 might have a different nutritional density than another bin on another house. And you can see on the far right that you can see how many pounds we fed to each of the tiers. So each of our chicken houses is roughly 7 tiers high. Each tier has X amount of birds, and then we feed those birds based on the pounds. So we'll try to get, as you can see today, tier 7 has had 1,425 pounds of feed delivered at this point in the day. And then going further down, you can see the total feed that was delivered yesterday. So this particular house had roughly 400 to 4,500 pounds on each tier. And we look at our feed on a per 100 perspective. So we're shooting to try to get all of our birds between 20 to 22 pounds of feed per each 100 birds. And that kind of, depending on how they're eating, where they are in their life cycle, what time of year it is, whether it's summer or winter, that number can shift. And as that number shifts, we will actually change our nutritional profile of that particular formulation. So we might do a formula that's designed for a 21-pound ration, and then look at it 2 weeks later, and the birds might be eating a little more. So we want to make sure that they're getting the right density of nutrition. So we may up that profile to a 22-pound ration. We're doing that every other week, but we're monitoring it on a daily basis to make sure that we're getting our birds the correct feed. And then in the center, you can see each column, 1 through 5 at the top and then 6 on the bottom. It's showing how many gallons of water we deliver to those particular birds. And we look at that too. The notion has always been that a bird will drink roughly 2 times what it eats. So a good sign of bird health and welfare is if you see any dips in water consumption, there's a sign typically that something might be going on back there, and you might need to go further investigate. It could very well be that the whole house dips. It could be just that the one column dips. So it's very important to make sure that we're getting fresh water to each flock as well.
No, that's great. And so we do have a question I want to address. I feel like it would only be fair with everything that's going on with high path avian influenza at the moment. But Douglas asked, is avian flu a concern? And we talked more about this in another virtual field trip, so we'll briefly mention, but yes, it is obviously a major concern in keeping the birds in the houses away from wild waterfowl that are spreading the disease, and that's how they can contract it, is obviously that's having them in those houses is a benefit to keep them away from those diseases. And that's where, again, talking about biosecurity. But yeah, I want to move on to water use and egg flow through the processing plant in the barns and what that looks like.
Right. So here you can see 2 of our compliance folks. We do regular cage audits to make sure that our birds are the right numbers in the cages. We're making sure that there's no issues within the cages, whether the water's not getting to the bird properly. We're checking for health of the bird. There's a couple things that you can check on the bird to make sure that it's producing eggs, it's consuming enough feed, it's healthy, and whatnot. So we do this regularly. We have a staff in the back, we call the back, the production area, that are regularly looking for birds. They're making sure that the mortality is taken care of, that the feed's in front of the birds, and just making sure that the general welfare for the bird is a comfortable one. And also to talk a little bit, you brought up the avian influenza, to talk about biosecurity. From a sustainability perspective of egg production, it's biosecurity is probably our most important asset that we do and that we follow. Here at the farm, we're constantly showering. We shower into the barns to make sure that we're leaving anything that's from outside the barns, and then we also shower going out. And then we also practice biosecurity in terms of a lot of our employees. We don't travel from farm to farm. If we do, we have a quarantine period to make sure that we're not bringing anything from one farm that could possibly hurt another farm. In between every house, we sanitize our footwear and our hands as well, to make sure that we're not, if there is possibly a small maybe illness in one barn, we're not taking it to the next. We also do that with our tools as we go through each facility, just making sure that we're keeping a good line of separation between each individual flock. And then we also have some buffer areas outside the facility where you can't go into them without having to shower in first. And that's even outside. So you should go in, shower out, and then you come outside in those areas, but you can't cross over those lines and then come back into the building. So none of our employees that are in the farm in the production area actually go outside on a daily basis. And if they do, they have to shower out and shower back in. So we're being very cognizant of the issues that are going on in the country right now with avian influenza.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I've got like kind of a multi-step question for you, because I see we have a question in the chat from Carrie, and then we had a question on registration, kind of going along back to environmental steward, as far as, you know, kind of on the topic of water. Is water recycled? And then as far as, do you try to, you know, with all the fans and lights, do you try to use renewable energy, or what does that look like? Some of the steps you guys have in place?
Yeah, so we'll start with the renewable piece of energy with the lighting. All of our barns are lit up with LEDs. I think it was about 5 years ago we transitioned from incandescent to LED. And it was a major, not only cost savings, but a major influence on the utility company. We were using less energy. We were actually, I mean, it's night and day. If you look at your house, when you do it in your house, you can see the difference. So the LEDs had a really big impact on us. From a utility perspective, we do use a lot of utilities with the lighting as well as the fans in the summer. The winters are a lot less since the fans aren't running as much. But then with the water, so the water in the barns itself doesn't go, the way they're set up is the lines are always pressurized. So the only water that leaves the lines is what the bird consumes. So there's no real water waste. And if there is water waste, let's say there's a leak somewhere, we're easily able to find it and we'll remedy the situation to make sure. We do sometimes purge the lines in the summer as they do get a little warm. So we'll purge that water to the outside to the grass, which the grass will consume. But that's more or less to get the temperature in the water lines back to a comfortable drinking temperature for the birds.
Okay.
All the water in the processing plant that we use to wash our eggs, we actually send to a lagoon. And then every summer we take a sample of that water and we figure out what the the nutrient density is, particularly around ammonia and phosphate. And then we will land apply that water with a giant sprinkler in the back on the fields to whatever gallons that were allowed. So this particular summer, you can see these two lagoons here that are in this screen. Those are where all of our egg wash goes. And then further in the back of the field, there's a large sprinkler, and we will pump that water across roughly about 3 acres. And depending on the nutrient profile, we'll apply 5 million gallons or whatnot, making sure that we're doing it, you know, while we're not leaching any water to the state waters. We kind of use it as the soil is a filtration for the ammonia and the phosphorus. And then whatever crop is on that particular field for that year, we're going to apply whatever that crop will take out. So corn particularly likes phosphorus and ammonia. So the corn will actually pull that out of the ground. So at the end of the year, we typically tend to be neutral on nutrients in the land. We're not adding any extra, and we're actually trying to take out a little more than we put on, So none of our water goes to any treatment plants or whatnot. It's all added back into the feed per se.
Yeah.
With the corn and soybeans.
That's great. And I know, so I think this is great footage to show a little bit how the eggs are cleaned and how they move. And we did have a question from Rebecca on how are eggs washed without breaking them. So I don't know if you mind touching quickly on, you know, some of those processes in place to make sure that we don't end up with a bunch of scrambled eggs.
Right. So we have in roughly each of the chicken houses, there's roughly 84 cloth belts that bring the eggs from the chickens up to the middle of the facility. Those belts move very slowly. So here you can see these are the cloth belts with the eggs on them. Those little black boxes actually count the eggs. So we're counting every egg that we produce, and those counters tie into a main control system that will actually control the flow of the eggs. We don't want to bring too many up at once, and we don't want to bring too little. So that picture where you saw all the eggs going into the machine, we're aiming at roughly 600 cases. So roughly 18,000 dozen every hour we're trying to bring up to the farm. And you can see the eggs are rolling around, but when it's all said and done through the transportation of getting these eggs up front, we see roughly 2% of the eggs actually cracked. So we've gotten pretty good at moving eggs very carefully, so that we're not creating damaged product. 2% doesn't sound like a lot. It is a lot when you're producing billions of eggs a year. But it's also safe to note too that we are allowed to put some cracked eggs into some of the cartons. There is USDA specs that we meet, and we actually usually exceed that. So particularly for the last couple months, I've been anywhere between 1% to 2% checks. Checks are cracks. That's kind of our own internal terminology for it. So we're putting 1% to 2% cracks coming up to the processing plant.
That's
So you can
great.
see it's quite a challenge with what
Yeah,
you're seeing here.
as far as careers, we'll talk on that here in a second as well, but maintenance and that technology again, and engineering of all that goes into this, and continually monitoring. If there's
Right.
a slight bump in the road, it can cause a mess real quick. So no, that's
Right.
great. So we're going to move on. Manure management. If I know we have Matt Simmons with Trillium Farms, he's the environmental compliance manager out in the barns as well. Would you all mind telling us a little bit about how the manure belts work and how that manure is removed from the house, and what that process looks like?
Yeah. So Matt, I'll start with inside and then we can go to outside.
Perfect.
So inside each of our buildings, we have large collectors of manure. So they're large white belts that are under every cage. As the chicken releases its manure, it falls onto this belt. In the center of this belt, so you can see on the right side here where the circle is, we have an air duct that supplies fresh air in between the cages to the birds, but it also acts as a dryer. So that air is fanning out across that manure, and we're drying that manure over the course of roughly 5 days. So we remove roughly 20% of the belts each particular day, and that gives it 5 days roughly to dry from when the manure was put on the belt. It can be a dirty process, but it's very important that we get that manure dried and out of the facility, particularly from a fly control perspective, as well as just from a air quality perspective. The drier it is, the better air quality you have. You're not getting the ammonia in the air, and it's good for the birds. So like I said, we move 20% of each barn every day back to where Matt's at, and I'll let Matt take over back in the manure storage barn.
Hello, everyone. As I mentioned, my name is Matt Simmons. I'm the environmental compliance manager here at Trillium Farms. I'm going to talk a little bit about the manure management on the outside of the facility. I'll turn my camera around here. So as you can see, this is a stockpile of manure in our manure storage building. As you can see, the building's pretty large. Back here in the back, there is a incline belt that actually brings the manure from inside the houses out into this facility. And you can see in the ceiling, there's several conveyor belts. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are able to pick of those which belt we want to disperse the manure on. We can put it on this pile over here, over on the other side. As they were talking earlier, obviously a big part of our job is to manage the manure in a way that we keep it dry to prevent any kind of fly breeding. We obviously want to keep fly control down, and we also want it to be usable for the farmer, the end user. And leading into that, they mentioned how it was a full circle process. We produce about 30,000 tons of manure at each facility, like this one here. Sorry, having some difficulty here with the hand here. And so the manure, once we do get to an end point where it is full and this barn can no longer handle anymore, farmers do come in. We have a third-party company that comes in and handles all of our manure as far as transportation, and that does go to the farms. Like I said, 30,000 tons. We typically, that is applied at a rate of 1 to 3 tons per acre. So you can kind of do the math on how many acres we cover with our manure. And again, it's a full circle. That manure is used on the fields that produce the crops, and the crops end up coming back to us to produce our feed. So that is kind of just an overall understanding of what our manure management looks like on the outside. But if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Matt. And I know farmers, because it is poultry manure is dry, like it's one of the favorite fertilizers for them to use. So,
Yeah,
okay, well, no, that's great. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was saying, yeah, absolutely. It is one of the less dirty manures to use compared to others. So it is obviously very desirable. It's high in phosphorus content and nitrogen content. So it is very useful for the farmer and end user.
Yeah, that's great. And so I guess this kind of, while I have Matt and Nick, we have some more question, but this ties us into overall general careers. There's so many different career points and things needed on especially, a layer site that you work on that size. So I don't know if you guys would mind talking about, like, Matt, maybe talk a little bit about what do you do on a daily basis, and, what are some of your favorite things about your job?
Yeah, so I am in compliance. Within compliance for Trillium, there's 3 different departments. There's environmental, animal health and welfare, and also food safety. For my particular department, I oversee manure management, pest control, and then all of our permitting, whether that for our regulatories that work with us, whether that be ODA or EPA. So there's several different aspects. I think my favorite part is that I do come from a farming background, so it allows me to get some of that internal office work, but there's also still field work that I get to be involved in. So that's my favorite part of my career. There's just a lot of different aspects, and you're constantly learning.
Yeah. And then, so Matt, you are just on layer site 1, correct? Or do you travel to the other sites as well?
Yeah, so I go to all of our facilities up in the north region. We have 2 layer sites as well as pullets up there. And then down here, we also have 3 layer sites as well as 3 pullet sites. So I'm over all of those from an environmental standpoint.
Okay. And then did you go to a university for your background, or?
Yeah, so I went to Ohio State University. I graduated in ag systems management, so it's more of an operations background degree. And then I also am in the process of completing my master's right now in ag engineering at Ohio State. So definitely being able to utilize that here. There's a lot of crossover for that.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially that Trillium Farms. So they are supporting the working and going back to school at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are helping me with my master's program. So that's been a huge plus as well. They are wanting to put back in or invest in their employees. So that's been a big plus.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I guess, Nick, I'll ask you as well. What are some of your favorite points of your job?
I'm just big on people. I really like to take the time to get to know my people, find out what motivates them, what their lives are like, how I can help, whether it's investing in them, giving them the opportunity to take on self promotions, and whatnot. My background a little bit. I've been in food my entire life, with the exception of out of college. I worked in the automotive industry, so I was in a maintenance role, and then I decided to get out of the maintenance role and go into operations. So I've been in operations for probably the last 15 years or so. In food, about 6 years ago, I actually came to ag. It was kind of an eye opener. I'd never been in ag, other than I had growing up in Atlantic Canada. I had a family that had 2 potato farmers, and then we had 2 dairies, which I'd spent time on the dairy, didn't do much of the farming. But was not really a true agriculture person. And I've been here 6 years. I absolutely love it. I love the people. I love the ability to really take an operation from start to finish, whether it be just putting feed in a bird and you know having the bird lay the egg and bring the egg and send it to a consumer. Um, it's one thing that I really love. I'm an engineer by schooling. Mechanical. Never thought I'd be an ag. Always thought I'd be an automotive. But here I am today. And like I said, I love every minute of it. I love the people that work for me. Interesting note, Matt's the compliance guy right now, but he's coming over here to work for us at Layer 1 here in the near future.
Awesome.
We're really excited to have him over here. His experience, his youth. A lot of people ask, what do we look for when it comes to people? Dan, if you could throw up that slide that I put up. This slide shows our company's guiding principles and values. So on the inside of the egg, what makes up the egg white is our core values. These are facets or characteristics that we look for in employees. Excellent, ownership's a big one. Having good integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, having respect, being careful of the community. And then if you look on the outside, we see things that we use as our guiding principles. We're big on servant leadership, being good stewards of our environment, being good stewards for our birds. And when it comes down to the end of the day, that not everybody has all these, but as a team and as leaders, we pick our people and we build our careers around what motivates us. And this whole egg is pure motivation for me. It makes me drive to be, give back to the community, give back to my employees, and really, grow Trillium, not just in the community, but within as well. We've done a lot of investment in our people. One keynote, we talk about sustainability. We've actually created a career center / training center where we're investing in our people and really giving back to them, from a skill set perspective so that we can grow them and, build onto their talents. So like I said, this egg, when you look at it, you have the outside shell with our guiding principles. You have the core values on the inside that make up the egg white, and together that creates a one team perspective. We like to think of ourselves as one team. We're all here to win, and we're all here to grow together. And how could you not do it and have fun following these items right here in front of us? So
Yeah,
that's what
no,
I love
that's
about
great.
my everyday.
No, that's awesome. And so we have a couple minutes for questions. So I have a couple I'm going to throw at you rapid fire, I guess. So one of the questions was from Miss Zacher, and it was, what safeguards are in place to protect nearby watersheds? So can you talk about a little bit more on that water quality and what are some of the ways you ensure the all that?
So in terms of watershed, we'll talk about the water itself. So all of our storm water is collected on site through a series of storm drains. That stormwater then goes to a lagoon, and that lagoon will then equalize, so to speak, with a what we call a sand bed. So to the left of that big lagoon, there's a sand bed that we will filter the water through to remove out the phosphorus and the ammonias and any of the nutrients that we can pull out prior to sending it to the nearby creek. We do regular testing of the water to make sure that the sand beds and the filtration system is working properly. So that way we're not dispersing any ammonia or phosphorus to the state waters that could harm fisheries or waterfowl or whatnot. And then, we talked about the egg wash, land applying that. So we don't really have any concerns with the egg wash. When it comes to manure, everybody that land applies manure is required to go to some Department of Ag trainings. There are what we call setbacks of where you can land apply it. You can't land apply it too close to a creek. It has to be roughly 50 feet away. And these are all stipulations that must be met in order to land apply that. And even though we sell and provide manure to local farmers, we still at the end of the day are responsible to make sure that they're meeting those setbacks and land applying it properly.
And I know there's always a lot of, talk around, obviously it's a big facility, but you've talked a little bit about how you have, because of that, you are able to, it is an expensive cost up front, but Trillium is, with the larger size, you can make that a little bit more efficient as far as you have people in place for animal welfare to monitor that. That's their full-time job. You have Matt on manure and environmental sustainability and just some of the technology that, Matt, where you are in all those different conveyor belts, I think it's so neat to see. And I didn't know how that was set up, but with the lagoons and you're just not able to per se afford some of those things on a smaller, they don't have those things in place as easily on smaller facilities. So just to see you're able to do some of those sustainability practices on those large facilities and all those steps you have in place is just really amazing. So I guess, we're almost out of time. Is there any last things or points that either of you wanted to bring up to the group?
I think for me, I want to thank everybody that partake today's event. It means a lot to see people that are interested. I love taking the time to, really teach people about what we do here. It's like I said, I've been here 6 years. I never thought I'd be here. love every minute of it, love being able to see it on a daily basis. I love when I get together with friends or new people and they always ask, well, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, well, I'm an egg farmer. And I always get a chuckle. And then next thing you know, for the next hour, we're talking about how a chicken lays an egg or whatnot. And, you can just see people, they take an interest in it and they don't realize the scale or, what goes all into it. And it's just, educating people about, the egg farming industry, the eggs in general, the farming community, the agriculture in general, just being able to educate somebody about that, whether it be somebody from the inner cities or somebody from even the rural local area. A lot goes into it. Eggs have been around a long time, who knows how long they've been around.
Yeah.
And we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're sustainable for a production aspect, but also from an environmental aspect. We want to continue to deliver to the local area and really provide for our communities, whether it be from an egg perspective or even from a career perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. Any closing things from you, Matt? Closing remarks or takeaway messages?
Yeah, again, just thank you for joining us. Obviously, from a young professional out my end is just, going and looking into the career world. Just make sure you are obviously go into places with an open mind, willing to learn, and just, again, make sure you're doing whatever you can to prepare yourself. So thank you guys for joining with us. Hopefully you learned something. And like Nick said, I grew up 10 minutes from here, and I can tell you, I honestly thought I'd never be in the egg world. So it's always funny when I talk to local people and they ask, what all do you do? And I tell them, and they drive up and down right past this place, and they have no idea what all it entails. So it's always fun to have those conversations. But thank you guys so much.
Yeah, great. And I know, so we do have a couple more minutes, and we had a couple questions come in last minute. So I'm going to Nick and Matt, you're not quite done yet. So one of the questions was, are the barns always full? This is from Karen Chester, or do you have time to pressure wash in between the flocks?
So the barns aren't always full. We typically have about 5 to 7 days in between each flock, where we will go through, we'll do a complete clean down, and we will actually sanitize the entire complex. Well, sorry, not complex, the entire barn to make sure that there's no residual issues from flock to flock. But we do have roughly 5 to 7 days, and it's pretty quick. It goes by fast.
Yeah. And then, another question, I don't know if you can answer this per se or not, but how much does it cost to run this whole process was one of the questions. So I know that may not be easy to answer per se, but
it is a challenge to answer. From a bird perspective, each chicken we usually say would cost between $5 and $6. So at any given time, we have roughly, $10 to $14 million worth of birds, and that's just the birds. The entire complex, I know the most recent number that I got thrown out here a couple months ago was that to build a fully functioning cage-free facility, it's roughly $75 a bird. So if you want to build $1 million bird complex, it's going to be roughly $75 million to build.
Gotcha.
When it comes to cost, the people labor, the maintenance labor, or the maintenance costs they pale in comparison to the feed costs. When you think about purchasing an egg, roughly 60 to 80% of that cost of that egg is going to be the feed cost. There's not a lot that we can do about that. It's just kind of how it is. We've got to feed the birds and make sure they have feed in front of them to get the eggs. We just have to be very efficient about how we do it, not overfeeding, not underfeeding, getting the right size of eggs. Because a lot of people don't like to buy medium eggs, right? So if you have a lot of medium eggs, they're hard to sell. So it's trying to get to those large and extra large eggs can be a challenge. But at the end of the day, it is a pretty expensive facility. But we take care of our birds and they take care of us. So.
Yeah. And I think we have one more question. I think it'll be good to finish this off for today. And it's, what are the biggest challenges facing the poultry industry?
I think right now, we talked a little bit about it earlier. We have avian influenza. That's been a big challenge this year. Typically you see it in cycles with the migration of birds from the north to the south in the spring, in the fall. And then when they return during the spring, we actually saw a lot of issues with avian influenza throughout the summer, which has not always been common. So it's been very, us being persistent and diligent with our biosecurity. I think another challenge that the industry is facing is, there's cage-free initiatives where not everybody's sure what they want to do with it yet. So we're kind of just, playing it with the wind and going with the flow of the air. If people want cage-free, we're making transitions to cage-free. If they want our conventional eggs still, we're still producing our conventional eggs. So, at the end of the day, as any business would do, we're going to do whatever our consumer would like us to do. So if that means we transition to cage-free in the next 5 to 10 years, that's where we'll see our business go.
No, that's great. Well, thank you both again, Nick and Matt, for your time today. For Trillium Farms for hosting us, Ohio Poultry Association and Grow Next Gen are sponsors for today. And if anybody's interested, you can find these materials and upcoming events on grownextgen.org/events/Chickenology. Like I said, we have our 4 previous virtual field trips, and this one is also going to be, you can find on Grow Next Gen or on YouTube as well. So again, thank you everybody for today. I appreciate your time, and have a good day.